Hello, this is High Templar, welcome to my Total War news video, and I am referring again to this blog that was posted on the 7th, and I want to focus this time on the historical content that is being brought to Total War series. And firstly, we see historical new content theme, and this one is working on the large campaign pack DLC, and campaign pack DLC is basically something that we've seen in, well, Charlemagne or the Caesar in Gaul or Hannibal at the Gates, all this stuff. So, or in the Total War Warhammer we've seen that with the Wood Elves and the Beastmen. So adding something to the game and also adding some campaign, which is very nice indeed. Now we have concept art connected to this particular game and DLC, and people already started to talk about Vikings and other stuff like that. So firstly, we know that this DLC will be expansion to one of the recent historical releases, and that would mean either Attila or Rome. And that's pretty much the only two possibilities. And there are some things that would say this is for Attila. For example, the other DLC, the other large content, is pretty much given it will be Rome 2. And that's as well because Rome 2 is actually better received and more people play it than Attila at this moment. So the larger content from Rome, smaller content, a DLC size for Attila, that would make sense. And the wings are used by some of the Vikings, and they were used in Vandal culture, which was few hundred years after the Attila himself, but well before. It was basically just before the Viking Age. So helms like that could be used in the Viking Age still, and this is a possibility. Now the problem with that is that winged helmets were used in many different places, and they were used by Celts, they were used by some of the Italian tribes, Etruscan, some Greeks, but mostly Celts and Germanic tribes. The wolves would also point to Germanic tribes, and this emblem on the shield, this particular sign, you might notice that in Rome 2 it's actually Heresy sign. So it might be pointing to more of a Germanic DLC than to Viking DLC. Viking is still possible, and I think from all the things we see that the large campaign pack DLC, it would make sense to give it for the Attila Viking Age. That would be something that makes sense. Now, if, however, this is Rome 2, there are a few options. The Heresy, which are actually bearing this sign in Rome 2, are Germanic tribes, and one of the leader of these tribes would be Arminus. So this is the guy that defeated the Romans in Tuborg Forest. We already have a battle of the Tuborg Forest in the actual Rome 2, and a campaign pack like that would make sense as well. Would it make large sense, better than the Viking invasion? Not really, because we already have campaigns covering two different periods of Rome. Firstly, way well into the Republican era we have our grand campaign for Rome, and then we have start of the Imperial. With the Imperial edition we have we have another campaign that is basically start of the Empire. And if that would be Ariminus, if that would be indeed a DLC focusing on him and his exploits and the war with Rome at this point of time, it would be, well, it would be pretty much few years after the Imperial Edition campaign, because those were Octavian legions that were led by Varus and that were defeated in Tuber Forest. So also Ariminus in here, I mean the guy in here who is supposed to be Ariminus doesn't really look young. The other thing that somebody pointed out is that this person is actually wearing a late Roman cuirass. I mean, it's really a chainmail, but either way, it's Roman, and normally you would see people from the barbarian tribes, especially the Vikings, wearing different eclectic style of armors, weapons, shields taken from the other cultures, and the Roman ones would be still surviving and being worn by those guys. It is still a possibility. So while there are some things pointing into the Rome, I do not believe this will be Rome. I do believe this is just pointing into Germanic origin of this person, and it will be Attila, most likely. So that is it for this one, and we don't know much about it. It's just all speculation. Then we have historical theme, and this one is interesting because those guys are creating a whole new historical game that will be released after Warhammer 2, possibly after Warhammer 3, but there is a possibility of release between 2 and 3. And there are few interesting things that they said here. It's very short, really, but major historical release continues apace. Team focus fast-acting UI and environment. This can mean anything. But we know that this unique setting that we are yet to explore in previous Warhammer Total War games. They already said that this settings was never used before. And there are not that many places that I haven't visited in the times since the beginning, because with Rome and then Attila and Charlemagne, and then we have medieval, obviously, including the kingdoms, and then we have the Empire and Napoleon. It's a large amount of history already covered, and some late Middle Ages are not covered very well. But I said that already. I mean, I don't like it particularly, but I was pointing towards maybe the World War I as a possible setting, since they already done tanks in Total War Warhammer and similar contraptions, and flying machines as well. So, what they are saying about this here? Important characters' relations that occur between major personalities in the game. Now the designers can start modeling various interactions, gameplay impacts the proposed features will have. Elsewhere campaign map is starting to come together in a new visual exciting way. Obviously, this will help set up the tone, immersion of the whole game. So they are not saying much, but they are saying that there will be important characters' relations between major personalities in the game. That, if this is historical, that sounds like Victorian era. because there were some blood times between people, the kings and Kaisers and people that were holding the power in the Europe at that point of time. They were related to each other, and there were some interaction between them. So it kind of points in that direction as well, but it is not a strong point, and that is again guessing. I would rather see something earlier than World War I, but World War I is kind of a top thing lately, especially with the release of Battlefield 1 and now Wonder Woman. So it is a possibility. It is a possibility that those guys will be hitting World War I. Not something particular I like, but there it is. And another one is historical Flashpoint team, and I feel like in this particular case those guys have spilled the beans. Well, pretty much they spilled everything. So they are saying that they are planning to set this in an era that they have already visited, but will cover particular period we are very fond of and haven't done enough justice to yet. Right? We've been thinking a lot about how our major releases covers eras and characters-based follow-ups span events of iconic lives like Napoleon and Attila, but we're also interested in flashpoint moments, those short intense periods where events could have unfolded in any direction, dramatically changing the course of the history in only a handful of months or years. So, what they are, and they are also saying that Fall of the Samurai being based on Boshin War is an example of it. So they gave us the example of Fall of the Samurai, Napoleon and Attila. Now, since this is concerning the recent historical releases like Attila and Rome, and will be based on iconic characters, and will be based on the changing moments in history that lasted for only a handful of months or years, this sounds awfully like, well, Alexander the Great and his conquering of the world. That lasted a decade, so handful of years, and there is Napoleon and Attila, and who else would you put here? I mean, Caesar or Alexander. Caesar was already covered. So, I feel like this is the only guy that fits here. So, there is possibility of they are doing something from the later period. But I feel like this is what they are doing with the historical Flashpoint team. I think this is what we will see. If you have any other ideas, if you have some points to show, why do you think this will be different era, why do you think I'm wrong, please leave that in the comments. But this is it. This is all about this video. I hope you like it. If it is, press like, comment if you will, and see my other videos. I do some Total War Warhammer stuff like mod reviews, DLC analysis, speculation videos, mechanics videos, but also I'll do Let's Plays in Total War series and other games. Thank you for watching, and see you later.